Okay, so you've shared this list, this really compelling list of, well, let's just say it, pretty scary diseases.
They certainly capture your attention, don't they? A
Yeah.
real mix of conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. And our job here is to kind of dig into these sources you sent over, right? Pull out the key stuff, the interesting bits.
Exactly. Give everyone a clear picture without getting lost in, all the medical jargon. Save people some time.
And the sources cover such a range, like you said, bacterial infections, fungal ones.
And then some really rare genetic things,
Mhm.
syndromes we barely understand even now. It's quite the landscape of human health challenges.
Definitely. We've already seen some eye-opening things just preparing for this. I mean, actual worms in your eyes
Uh-huh. That one's memorable.
and bacteria that just dissolve tissue
Right.
and these super rare conditions.
It's fascinating and sometimes quite sobering stuff.
Right. So we're going to focus specifically on the 10 diseases that were highlighted in that 10 Most Today article you provided. Sound good?
Sounds like a plan. Let's dive in. Where should we start?
Let's start with Noma, also called Cancrum oris.
That's the one, Noma. It's a really devastating condition, basically a very fast-moving gangrene.
Gangrene of the face.
Primarily the face, yeah. Sometimes the mouth or even genitals in some cases.
Yeah.
It progresses rapidly.
Wow. And specific bacteria are involved?
Yes, the article mentions Prevotella intermedia and Fusobacterium necrophorum. They're kind of opportunistic. They take hold when the body's defenses are really low.
Okay, gangrene of the face. That's hard to even imagine. And the article said it mostly affects young kids.
That's right. Typically malnourished children, often between 2 and 5 years old. You see it most in parts of Asia and Africa.
But not only there, right? I think it mentioned cases elsewhere.
That's a crucial point, yeah. There have been documented cases in the US and Europe too, so it's not strictly confined geographically, even if it's much rarer there.
And the progression, it sounds awful. The bacteria contaminate tissue.
Right, around the mouth, usually. That leads to these terrible ulcers.
And then the tissue itself dies. Cheeks, lips.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The soft tissues necrose, die off, often teeth are lost, and it leads to really significant permanent facial disfigurement.
It really shows how vital nutrition is, doesn't it? How vulnerability increases.
Absolutely. Malnutrition is a huge factor in susceptibility to infections like Noma.
Okay. Moving on, the next one definitely caught my eye. Filarial worm, or Loa worm.
Ah, yes, the eye worm.
So these are actual worms that can move into your eyes and just live there.
Well, live might be strong. They can certainly migrate through the eye tissue, and you can sometimes even see them. It's understandably alarming.
I'll say. But the article connected this to elephantiasis too.
It did. It's the same family of parasitic worms if they lodge elsewhere in the body, particularly in the lymphatic system.
Okay, that's when you get the swelling. Like in
Yeah.
elephantiasis, the huge limbs.
Precisely. They disrupt the lymphatic drainage, causing that massive swelling, usually in the lower limbs.
So same kind of worm, different awful outcome depending on where it settles.
Pretty much, yeah.
And there were other symptoms mentioned too. Abdominal pain, rashes, arthritis even.
Mm-hmm. Papules, which are like raised bumps, rashes, abdominal pain, arthritis. It can be quite systemic.
Is there treatment? Please tell me there's treatment.
Yes, thankfully. Anti-helminthic medicines, drugs specifically designed to kill parasitic worms.
Okay, that's good to know. Understanding how these parasites work seems key for public health.
Definitely, especially their life cycles and how they're transmitted in those endemic areas.
All right, let's shift to something really, really rare now. Systemic capillary leak syndrome. Clerkson's disease.
Parkinson's disease, yes. Extremely rare. And it's a strange one.
The description.
Yeah.
Massive leakage. Plasma and stuff just leaking out of blood vessels into tissues.
That's essentially it. Your capillaries, the tiniest blood vessels, suddenly become way too permeable. They just start leaking fluid, plasma, proteins.
What does that do to a person?
Well, the symptoms listed are things like profound weakness, major swelling face, arms, legs, lightheadedness, nausea.
Because the fluid isn't where it's supposed to be.
Exactly. And as the leakage continues, the volume of blood circulating drops dramatically.
Which leads to...
Dangerously low blood pressure. That can starve organs of oxygen, leading to organ damage.
And the article mentioned death.
Yes, potentially death if it's severe and not managed quickly. The body just loses too much fluid from the circulatory system.
Wow. It really underscores how, I don't know, finely balanced our whole circulatory system is.
It truly does. Even though Clarkson's is incredibly rare, it shows how vital that blood vessel integrity is.
Okay. Let's move to the next one. Eumecytoma, or Madura's foot.
Madura's foot, right. This is a fungal infection.
Primarily the feet and legs, it said.
That's where it most commonly starts, yes. But it can potentially affect other body parts too.
And it causes swelling.
Yes. Characteristically hard swellings, often filled with pus. They can really impair movement over time, become quite disabling.
The article made a point about the initial swelling often being painless.
Yes, and that's a real danger, isn't it?
Totally, because you might ignore it if it doesn't hurt, right? Delay getting help.
Exactly. And by the time it becomes more obvious or problematic, the infection can be quite advanced.
So, persistent weird swelling, even painless, get it checked out.
Always a good rule of thumb.
Where's this usually found?
It's more common in tropical and subtropical regions, South and Central America, India, the parts of Africa, often linked to agricultural work.
Makes sense. And prevention is pretty basic stuff.
It seems so. Keeping feet and hands clean, good hygiene generally, and wearing proper footwear, especially if you're working in fields where the fungi might be present in the soil.
Simple steps, big impact potentially.
Sometimes, yes.
Okay, next. Leprosy. Hansen's disease. People have heard of this, but maybe don't know the reality.
Right. There's a lot of historical baggage and stigma with leprosy.
The article identifies the bacterium, Mycobacterium leprae.
Correct. And it's an infectious condition, primarily affecting the skin.
Nerves, too, right? That seemed key.
Peripheral nerves, yes. And the upper respiratory tract, eyes. The nerve damage is crucial because it leads to loss of sensation.
Which then leads to injuries people don't feel, and that causes the disfigurement often associated with it.
Exactly. The skin lesions are also a direct effect, but the nerve damage underlies many of the long-term complications if it's untreated.
But the big myth is how contagious it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
The article stressed it's not highly contagious.
absolutely crucial point. It requires prolonged, close contact with respiratory droplets from someone who has leprosy and isn't being treated. It's not something you catch easily.
And maybe the most important thing, it's curable now.
Fully curable, yes. With multi-drug therapy, it's a real medical success story, overcoming a disease that caused so much fear for centuries.
Definitely. Okay, brace yourself for the next one. Vibrio vulnificus sounds virulent.
It can be, yes,
Eh.
a nasty bacterium.
The symptoms listed: severe abdominal pain, diarrhea, vomiting, and blistering skin infections.
Blistering dermatitis, yes. It can cause some really ugly skin lesions.
How do people usually get this? The article mentioned a few ways.
Yeah, several routes. Stingray stings were mentioned. Swimming in brackish or salt water, especially if you have an open wound. That's a common one.
Okay, so beachgoers need to be aware.
And perhaps the most cited route, eating raw or undercooked shellfish, particularly oysters.
Oh, the raw oysters again. Definitely gives you pause.
It should, because if this bacterium gets into your bloodstream, it can be really dangerous.
That's what the article stressed. It can affect the blood, the liver, weaken the immune system.
And lead to potentially fatal septicemia if it's not treated quickly with antibiotics. It's serious business.
There was also a note about environmental factors, salt levels, and temperature.
Right. The idea is that lower salt levels in coastal waters, maybe from rainfall runoff, combined with warmer temperatures, can help the bacteria thrive.
So climate change could potentially make this more common.
That's a concern, yes. Environmental shifts can definitely impact the prevalence of certain pathogens.
Okay, switching gears a bit. Not an infection, but complex regional pain syndrome, CRPS.
Ah, yes, CRPS. This one is about pain. Intense, debilitating pain.
The article described it as excruciating pain from even a light touch. That sounds just unbearable.
It really does. Imagine living with that constant hypersensitivity.
What causes it? Is it nerve damage?
It's thought to be a malfunction, sort of a breakdown, within the central nervous system itself. Often it gets triggered after some kind of significant injury.
Like a broken bone or surgery?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can apparently start without a really clear injury beforehand.
And the types of pain: stabbing, throbbing, burning, grinding, sounds relentless.
It paints a grim picture, doesn't it?
It usually starts in one limb, like a hand, but can spread.
Yes, typically starts in an extremity, but it can unfortunately spread, sometimes affecting large parts of the body or even becoming systemic.
And other symptoms too: numbness, sleep problems.
Numbness, insomnia, joint pain. It's a whole constellation of symptoms, making it really complex to manage.
There was an interesting, almost counterintuitive finding mentioned about mental health.
Oh, right. That some studies suggest people with CRPS might actually see a decrease in pre-existing issues, like depression or anxiety.
That's weird. Why would that be?
It's not fully understood. The mechanisms linking chronic pain and mental health are incredibly complex and needs more research for sure, but it's an intriguing observation.
Are there treatments?
Yes, thankfully. Physical therapy is often key. Medications for pain, and sometimes more interventional procedures or even surgery are options.
Okay. Now for something totally different again. Pica.
Pica, yes. An eating disorder, but not in the way most people think of them.
Right. It's defined as eating non-food stuff
Well,
compulsively.
exactly. Craving and consuming non-nutritive substances.
And the examples were kind of shocking. Paint, hair, feces, dirt.
Yes, the range is broad and often quite concerning. Dirt, clay, paint chips, hair, plastic pebbles, metal objects, even feces.
What are the risks? I mean, besides the obvious yuck factor.
Pretty significant risks. Anemia, especially if things like clay interfere with iron absorption. Intestinal obstructions are a big one.
Blockages, yeah.
Infections from contaminated items, like parasites from soil or bacteria from feces. And toxicity, lead poisoning from old paint chips. It's a classic example.
The article noted it's seen more often in children.
It is more frequently diagnosed in children, yes, but it can occur in adults too.
Any idea why? Nutritional deficiencies, maybe?
That's one theory, especially for things like iron or zinc deficiency. Developmental issues, psychological factors can also play a role. It's often complex.
And treatment reflects that. It mentioned a multidisciplinary approach.
Absolutely. Social workers, doctors, psychologists using behavioral strategies. It often takes a team approach to address the underlying causes and manage the behavior.
It really broadens the definition of eating disorder, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Shows they can manifest in many different ways, rooted in complex issues.
Okay, we're near the end of the list. This one sounds incredibly tough. Fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, FOP.
FOP. Yeah, this is profoundly rare and incredibly difficult to treat, a really challenging genetic condition.
The core issue is the body forming bone where it shouldn't.
That's the crux of it. When someone with FOP injures connective tissue muscles, tendons, ligaments, instead of healing normally with new, flexible tissue,
It heals with bone.
it heals by forming bone. The body's repair mechanism goes haywire and deposits bone in those soft tissues.
Oh my God, so your muscles and ligaments literally turn into bone over time.
Progressively, yes, which leads to joints becoming locked, inflexible, eventually causing profound immobility.
And any new injury just makes it worse, speeds it up.
That's the cruel reality of it. Trauma, bumps, falls, even injections or surgeries can trigger flare-ups of new bone formation, accelerating the process.
It sounds like a terrible trap. The article mentions someone specific, Harry Eastlake.
Yes, Harry Eastlake, a well-documented case, lived into his 40s with FOP.
Became almost completely immobile.
Eventually, yes, except apparently for his lips. It's hard to fathom.
And his skeleton is in a museum.
Yes, he donated his skeleton to the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia for scientific study. An incredible contribution to help understand this devastating condition.
Wow. Okay, last one. Elephant Man syndrome. Tied to Joseph Merrick.
Right, Joseph Merrick's story is probably the most famous association, though the term itself is a bit outdated now. Born in England, 1862.
And his condition involved lumpy skin, like an elephant's.
Yeah, was the description, yes. Thick, lumpy skin, major facial asymmetry and growths, and significant overgrowth of his right arm and both legs.
What actually caused it? Is it known now?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Even today, the exact cause in Merrick's specific case is still debated, still a bit mysterious.
The article mentioned that old theory about his mother and elephants.
Yeah, the story that his mother was frightened by an elephant while pregnant. Pure folklore, obviously, reflecting the lack of scientific understanding at the time.
What's the modern thinking? Proteus syndrome.
Proteus syndrome is a leading candidate, yes. It's a known genetic condition that causes overgrowth of bones, skin, and other tissues, often resulting in tumors. It fits many aspects of Merrick's condition.
But maybe not the whole story.
Possibly not. Some experts cited in the article suggest it might have been a combination of things. Perhaps Proteus syndrome plus other conditions like neurofibromatosis or specific bone disorders like hyperostosis, maybe even microcephaly.
So potentially multiple genetic issues overlapping.
It highlights just how complex these rare genetic disorders can be, and that we're still unraveling the specifics of the human genome and how variations can manifest.
It really does. Merrick's life, despite the hardship and prejudice,
Became a powerful story about resilience and the importance of seeing the person behind the condition. And the scientific quest to understand it continues.
Well, that was quite a journey through some really intense conditions. Your sources definitely gave us a window into some major challenges in human health.
From infections to genetics, yeah. A broad and sometimes startling spectrum.
We really hope this deep dive, pulled out the interesting threads for you, made sense of some complex stuff without being too overwhelming or textbooky.
Exactly. Hopefully it was insightful, maybe brought some awareness to conditions you hadn't heard of and kept it engaging.
Yeah, we hope so. It's definitely a reminder, isn't it, of how fragile the body can be, but also how incredibly resilient.
And how much effort goes into medical research trying to understand and fight these things.
Absolutely. So, maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As you reflect on these, which one stood out to you the most? Which condition seemed most surprising, or maybe most concerning, and why?
Yeah, thinking about that can tell you a lot about your own perspectives on health, on vulnerability, on just the human condition, really.
Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.